Continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell, and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences, and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@carn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community. CATHIB is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.
Good morning. Nice to see all of you and welcome to another of our health hours, Caribbean African Health Network health hours. I'm delighted today to welcome back a speaker that is well known to all of you. Dr. Joe Omofuma is going to take us through a really important topic at this current time, and it's mental wellness in the midst of a cost of living crisis. It's really difficult for many people at this point in time, and Dr. Joe is going to give us some tips on how to manage that. So these topics that we have chosen each week are for you, our audience, and would encourage you to participate and ask questions. You can pop them in the chat or you can put your hand up. At the same time as bringing this important topic to us, the Caribbean African Health Network is here in collaboration with many other organisations. And these are the RAFA International Agency, the Croydon BME Forum, the Enfield Caribbean Association, the Royal Assembly of Christian Church of God in Sheffield, the Black Health Initiative, and so we thank all our partners for supporting us to bring these health hours to you. So looking forward to what I know will be an interactive and interesting session. Over to you, Dr. Joe.
Thank you, Ngozi. Good morning, everyone, and very happy New Year to you all. Glad to be able to join you once again today. I hope you've all started the new year well. So, like Ngozi had alluded to, I've been tasked with sharing on mental wellness in the midst of a cost of living crisis. It's a very, very important topic to begin with. So what I've chosen to do, because I recognized in my last presentation, my last time with you, quite a few new people are joining. And so I thought at the beginning of the year, let's take a couple of steps back and try and get some foundational things in place. And so I'll be looking at some things from first principles, and then we'll have a hopefully lively discussion about what we could be doing and what we should be doing. All right, I will try to share my slides with you now. Just bear with me. That's So it's always a joy to come to these meetings. It's my privilege to be able to share. It's part of our way of giving back to the community and just being able to help one another really on our journey on how we can better take care of ourselves. So this is me. If for those of us who do not know who I am, I'm a local GP in Manchester here. I wear quite a number of hats, including being a pastor, a religious pastor. I'm a certified speaker and a coach. I do youth mentoring, amongst other things. So as a disclaimer, I'm not quite sold on which one is best, whether it's Ghanaian jollof rice or Nigerian jollof rice. So maybe that's another debate topic for another day. So let's quickly go into the topic for the day. What is mental health? Because a lot of people talk about mental health a lot. And I just thought, well, let's go back a little bit. Let's reel it in and let's try and understand better what exactly mental health is. Because I get a lot of people asking me questions and I get the feeling that sometimes we're not really all on the same page. So my favorite definition, and there are loads, but one of my favorite definitions of mental health is it's positive mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her true potential and is able to cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and make contributions to society. Please listen to this different bits very. It wasn't my definition. I wish I came up with it. If I was going to come up with a definition, this would be it. I got this from a psychiatrist friend because I attend most of their events. I'm the mental health lead for my practice. I also volunteer for CAN as the mental health lead, so I have an interest there. A state of well-being in which an individual realizes their true potential. They're able to cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, and make contributions to society. So you will understand as we go along why I'm sort of emphasizing these few things. By way of introduction, unfortunately, mental health is still very poorly understood. You know, if someone's bleeding, we know that they're bleeding and our empathy goes there. If someone has diabetes, we know that they have diabetes. If someone had a stroke, hypertension, you can treat these things. Mental health is not something you can see. And so there's still some stigma and poor understanding associated with mental health, which makes it much more difficult, sometimes even for health professionals to be able to deal with. The flip side now, what we're seeing in the last 5 or so years with Generation Z and X and a few other people, is that now mental health is used quite flippantly for any and everything. You know, there's no sliced bread in Tesco and it's affecting my mental health. Millwall beat Man United and so it's affecting my mental health. There's loads of things that people, you know, miscategorize as being mental health. I want us to just remember that there are people who genuinely suffer with mental health problems and are going through a lot of anguish. It's a source of loss of earnings for a lot of people. Relationships have been destroyed, and also the ability to make significant impact in life or even enjoy their daily life have been affected by people with mental health. So for me, when I started my career and I began to see a lot of people with mental health, they really perked up my empathy and my sympathy because I could see the suffering, the genuine suffering. So while, you know, not having sliced bread in Tesco may be a disaster for some people, and, you know, fair enough, but all I'm trying to say is that there are a lot bigger issues and people with a lot of genuine problems who are going through a lot of difficulty with regards to their mental health. The current cost of living crisis has not helped, as you can imagine, because most people have not quite recovered from the COVID pandemic, which has now been medically proven to have made a significant impact on a lot of people's mental health. As a matter of fact, I was reading a paper where even the health professionals who looked after people during COVID are now being encouraged to go get some form of therapy and counseling because we were also impacted. We were affected. It was a very difficult time, I must tell you. Going to work every day, everybody else is staying at home. And then along the line, you are hearing or seeing that some of your colleagues have either died or have long-term illnesses. It can affect you if you're not very careful. And so we're going to hone in on the issues around the cost of living crisis, the socioeconomic situation. But I wanted to paint a broader picture before we do that. Mental health obviously refers to a range of conditions other than the stereotype psychotic individual, because most of the time when we hear about mental health, or sometimes in certain circles when we talk about mental health, the idea we have is the psychotic man who's running around shouting, probably half clothed, and out of their mind. That's one aspect of mental health, but it's not the whole story. Mental health disorders range from very subtle changes in behavior, such as in personality disorders, borderline personality disorders, to very common problems such as anxiety, depression, phobias, fears, and of course, then the psychotic people who see things, and and then bipolar disorders. So there are quite a wide range of things. Some of them very subtle, some of them very overt. It's said that 1/3 of adults in the UK will suffer from some form of mental health disorder at some point in their lives. Now, you and I don't have to be statistics, which is part of the reason why we're doing this. And if you're already a statistic, it's not the end of the world. Our job is to help educate each other along this journey so that we can help find better coping mechanisms and how we can sort of help each other along the way. And also worthy of note is the fact that within these disorders, there are a range of severity within them, so that two people with bipolar disorders may not necessarily present in the same way. Some people have very, very bad, very severe symptoms with having bipolar, and some people are very mild and you're almost undetectable, but they still need attention. And so it's sort of gauging those subtle differences and being able to deal with them that often helps to be able to see how those people are helped properly. Because part of the problems we face with mental health, as with some aspects of health now, is lack of funding or lack of attention. And some of us, some of my colleagues, we're trying to shine the light on the importance. I've been in several meetings and sat at the table where we're trying to shine the light on mental health and the fact that it's understaffed, underfunded, and sometimes not enough adequate attention really is paid to mental health for the reasons I've already outlined, but also partly because sometimes we feel there are more important things, or it's very difficult to believe an individual who sat in front of you, completely able-bodied, and they tell you that they can't go out of their house because of anxiety, and you need to be able to peel the layers like peeling an onion to be able to decipher what exactly the issues are. So I've said here that more self-awareness is needed to prevent and manage these as well, but also awareness is needed to be able to recognize in others so that we can ensure adequate empathy and attention. What are the risk factors in general for mental health? The long list, which is not exhaustive by any chance, but by and large, genetics. So if mental health runs in a particular family, it's more likely that there will be somebody else who will have mental health. There is no direct transmission for mental health, but there is a larger propensity if someone already suffers with mental health. Certain temperaments and personalities have been shown to be more at risk. People who are more quiet, who tend to keep things in, may well develop anxiety and things like that, more likely. Stress is a huge, huge one. Stress is a huge precipitating factor and a perpetuating factor. So see, when we talk about mental health things, we talk about, and this is important for this particular presentation, we talk about precipitating factors. In other words, what are the things that can tip somebody over into having a mental health problem? We talk about perpetuating factors. What are the things that can keep that individual within those circumstances? And then we talk about also, we talk about protective factors. So what are the things that will make somebody either survive that mental health crisis or not even get into it at all? So stress is one of those factors that is both a precipitating and a perpetuating factor. One of the very strong, and I'll be talking about this later on, one of the strong protective factors is when you have people around you, social interaction, strong family bonds, people who have people around it. So risk factors include things like being solitary, being alone, being isolation, social isolation. Interestingly, being male is interestingly, mental health disorders are more common in females, but tend to be more severe in males. We don't understand why. Socioeconomic factors, which is one of the main things we're going to be talking about today. How the fact that the economy, lack of resources can really tip people over. And I will sort of play a little bit on that a little bit more. Traumas are very, very important. why am I bringing all this in? You see, usually when people suffer with mental health or when there's a mental health issues going on, it's almost never really one thing. And it will be very, very parochial or myopic to sort of look at it from just one thing. Even the socioeconomic factors then cause stress. Stress then leads to alcohol excess or drug use. That can then lead to social isolation. That can then lead to trauma. That can then lead to abuse. So you can see that all these things tend to link up with each other. So I thought it was prudent and necessary to bring all these things out so that we can see psychological trauma, very important. People who suffer with neglect or people who are being abused, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, especially when people are being deprived of uh, finances or what they're due, promotion, etc. So you can see that all these are risk factors. These are what we call precipitating factors. These are things that can tip people over into suffering with mental health problems. And it's really important that we pay attention to them. How do you recognize when someone's suffering with a mental health issue? Again, this list is by no means exhaustive. I could write a couple of pages, but there are a few things that that pop up very often. And so those are the things that I've sort of put here. Like I always like to say, our presentations here, or at least most of us, I can speak for myself, we try to pitch this at the level of the community so that I'd rather you go home with something simple and tangible to go away with rather than bamboozling you with very highfalutin terms. I could tell you that, you could have cephalgia and all that, and that's just telling you have a headache. But why not just call it a headache so that everybody understands what you're talking about? So anyway, signs and symptoms. Social withdrawal, very important, very, very important. So usually when we suffer with trauma, when we're going through a difficulty, one of the most natural instincts of all is to withdraw. You find a safe place. You withdraw yourself from that environment so as to protect yourself. It's normal. It's natural. So when you find people more withdrawn, more isolated, people are not able to come to work or even truancy, not going to school. The research has shown that a lot of children who say they don't want to go to school for various reasons, usually there's something going on. Either they're being bullied in school, or they don't like a particular teacher, or there's something else going on. There was a particular child. I like to give case studies so you can identify. There's a particular child who was bedwetting at the age of about 13. And her friends or the children would make fun of her because she had a funny smell when she came into school, and she noticed it. And because of that, she stopped attending school. And yes, they pushed it to my table, the GP, to look into this. And by the time we looked into it, we had to, first of all, take a step back, try and solve the issue with bedwetting. And once we did that, all the other things were put in place. There was another child, a young girl, who apparently, this is a very sad situation. Actually, single mom, had 2 children, very young single mom, and she would leave the children and go and party. And by the time she came back the next morning, she didn't have time to make food for the children. So this young girl was stealing. She was, and the teachers couldn't understand why she would pinch food here and pinch food there, and all of that. And by the time they came to us, see, I was quite fortunate that I did pediatrics. So I did a whole year, more than that actually. I did a lot of pediatrics in part of coming up to my part of my education within the UK and even outside the UK. And I began to look at things. And I spoke to a pediatrician friend of mine, and she laughed out loud. She really laughed and said, the girl is hungry. That's why she's stealing. So by the time we looked into it further, there were safeguarding issues. And yes, the girl was actually hungry. There was no psychological problem. There was no mental health problem. She was being neglected because the overall picture was that of she wasn't well kempt. She didn't have a wash. Anyway, so there are things that we can identify as things that are causing mental health problem. Social withdrawal, truancy, anger and irritability, just for no reason, outburst of anger. I'm not talking about when Arsenal is losing and you're angry. No, no, no. There's the reason for that. And my sympathies go to Arsenal fans. But we're talking about just for no reason, just being angry all the time. Usually there's a trauma, there's a stress behind it. There's something that's caused it. Please, Arsenal fans, don't send me messages. I know you guys are militant and everything. But usually there's a reason behind it. There's something that's causing that anger. And you need to be careful, even in ourselves, when you're getting irritable for no reason. There could be, and there are other things that could be causing that. One of the symptoms, for example, of menopause is mood swings, anger, and irritability. So you have to be careful when you're assessing an individual or when you're looking at yourself to see what else could be going on with me. What are the things that are going on around me that could be contributing to all of this? Because these symptoms are not exclusive to mental health. Unhinged or uninhibited behavior. I talked about the child who was stealing food. There are people who are sexually uninhibited. I had a number of patients who, by the time we delved into it, one of them had caught several STDs at the age of 17, 18, as a particularly bad case of a young girl in Liverpool who had 2 abortions or terminations at the age of 15. But when we delved into it, it was the fact that her father was not on the scene. Her stepfather was not sexually abusing her, but just a bully. And so she just became very unhinged. So there are lots of different scenarios that come our way from time to time where we have to look at a very broad picture. Poor appetite, that's quite common. If you're sad, you're not going to eat, or if you're sad, you may eat more. Sleep disruption is a big one, massive one. These are things that we see very, very commonly. And most of the time, people come to us with these symptoms rather than the mental health problem. And it is in dealing with the sleep problem that we then find that actually there might be some mental health issues behind it. Headaches is another common one. We had a few talks. I've given a few talks on migraines. We've had talks about headaches here. Headaches are a very broad topic, and very often it could be stress from a mental health issue or stress from other issues that then cause you to have somatic or physical symptoms. Talking about physical symptoms, palpitations, chest pains, pins and needles in your hands often are signs of anxiety and depression. And so those things are things that we are always very careful to look into to make sure that there's no mental health issue behind that. Obviously, self-injurious behavior, if someone's harming themselves, cutting themselves, taking an overdose, excessively drinking alcohol, excessively smoking, all these are subtle signs, and there's quite a number, but these are all things that by the time you begin to piece them together, you then find that there may well be a mental health problem there. Okay, so I put all that in to just give us a little bit of an overview. How do we begin to cope? This is where I feel maybe we'll chat more about this in the chat, but just to talk about a few pointers, just to highlight a few things. I think, and this is just me being very subjective, especially in Manchester, where around where I work, and I've worked around different places. A good social support network is very, very important. Research has shown that people who go to social gatherings like a mosque or a church or a temple are less likely to suffer with mental health problems. So if you have a good social support network, as a matter of fact, one of the protective factors for mental health is being in a relationship, having a husband, a partner, having children, so that support network acts as a good protective factor. Being single, being isolated tends to work the other way. So whatever you do this year, find a group, find your tribe, find somewhere that you can relate to. And let me be quick to say that don't just go anywhere. It has to be a network that is supporting you, because sometimes you can be in a crowd and still be lonely and still be isolated. Or you can be in a crowd where they're not really doing you any good, very toxic environment. I often say to people in where I wear my other hat, if you're not in an environment where you are being egged on to make progress, where you're being supported, or where you don't feel like you don't feel good going there. Maybe it's time to change that environment, change your circle of friends, or change whatever it is, because it's not helping your mental health. In one of my presentations, I talked about the fact about stress. You see, stress, when it is prolonged, can cause further problems. If you keep exposing yourself to stressful situations, it's one thing to see a lion and run away, but if you're constantly threatened, it has a way of affecting you to the point where it even begins to affect your physical health. Ulcers and diabetes and other things have been shown to result from that. So a good social support network is absolutely important. The CATIB, Caribbean and African Health Network, is a very, very good one, if I may say so myself. These are lots of charities and organizations that come together to help each other and can support them. And I know that for a fact because I've seen that happen. But more than that, you choose your own area. If it is people who watch birds, if it's a book reading club, just try not to be isolated, and whatever it is, it's really important that I can't overemphasize that. Within the Caribbean and African, society or, ethnicity, we're quite good at having families and things, even though many of us now are getting very, very, I don't want to say westernized, but we are now living in silos. The normal thing, and I've seen this with Eastern Europeans as well, you have grandparents in the picture, parents, grandparents, uncles, like the saying says, it takes a village to bring up a child. So that network is really, really important to help to cope better with mental health. I think I've said enough about that. Good work-life balance, it's absolutely, I think it's a no-brainer. But let me just say this, because many times, some of us don't know how to relax. Some of us don't know how to play. I had a lady, very funny, lovely lady, nurse, on her day off, when she had a holiday, she went and booked extra work. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? She was like, she had nothing to do. She just went and worked even more. And I cast my mind back and I thought, this was me many years back. You have to find a way to be able to relax. Good work-life balance is very important. Those kids, those young children, they'll grow up very quickly. Spend time with your family. I've written here that stress is better prevented rather than trying to cure it. Find something that you love to do, go swimming, play badminton, do something. But having a good work-life balance, learn to say no. Because some of us, we work and work and work and work and work and work and work. Some of us are the exact opposite. But whatever it is, let there be a good balance. Because if you don't do that, not only will it affect our mental health, it will also affect our physical health. This third one is crucial. A lot of research suggests that lack of sleep has been linked not only to mental health disorders, but even to cardiovascular disorders, so heart attacks and strokes. Very important. Somebody asked a question before, how much sleep is enough sleep? I spoke to a sleep consultant and his simple answer was, whatever sleep works best for you. I think we've answered that question before. So some of us, let me put myself in that category, survive easily on 5 hours of sleep. It's not how much you sleep, but how well you sleep. So having good sleep is very important. Undisturbed sleep. I had a patient come in just a few days ago, and she would sleep for 9-10 hours, but it was disturbed. She could hear everything going on. She was interrupted. That's not good sleep. You have to be able to have 4 or 5 hours of uninterrupted REM sleep, really deep sleep, where the sleep is, that allows your body to repair itself. And that's helps your normal day-to-day functions. A lot of times we take some of these things for granted, and unfortunately, people pay the price for it. I have a patient right now that we're managing. Once she doesn't sleep, I know, my colleagues and I, we know for a fact that she's going to have a mental health breakdown. It's almost the last 7 or 8 years that I've been dealing with her. The first thing we do when she starts having a meltdown is we make sure she's sleeping. Once she starts sleeping, everything else gets better. Her children are able to, she's able to cope better with her kids. Everything else is better. Nutrition and exercise. I understand you had a session on this last week, but these are very important as well. What we eat, the exercise. When you exercise, you're not only losing weight and looking trim and looking nice for your summer outfit, but you're also helping your heart and your brain to be able to cope better, because then blood flow is released to those parts of your body. And so generally you feel good, naturally good hormones and chemicals are released into your body that make you feel good. So exercise does a lot more than, you know, giving you a nice figure and helping you to have a six-pack, but it also helps your overall ability to be able to cope with day-to-day things. Remember, our definition of mental health is the ability to cope with normal stresses of life, because there will be stresses of life. Things will happen. You know, Man United will lose. The rain will fall. There will be snow. There will not be sliced bread in Tesco. There will be stresses of life. That is a given. It is now the ability to cope with those that dictates whether you have positive or good mental health or not. This one is very important to me personally, having a positive mental attitude. Like I said, this list is not exhaustive, but people who have a negative perspective towards life tend not to do really, really well. The research showed, I was reading a study on surgery, people who go for operations, and people who have a positive outlook towards surgery, towards life, tend to heal better, tend to recover better, have better outcomes in terms of the surgical operation itself. So having a positive mental attitude is really important. Looking forward with hope is really important. And so we can't really dwell too much on that. Finally, help is not far away. Again, I know there are many people connecting from different parts of the country, but locally in every emergency department, there's a crisis team. So if you feel yourself or a relative or someone you know is going through a crisis, there is a mental health crisis team in every emergency department, or there should be. I can't speak for Wales, but I can speak for England. I can't speak for Scotland either, sadly. But generally, we have a crisis team in all these different departments. That's what is supposed to happen. And so if there's a crisis of mental health, because most mental health things are not an emergency, all right? So there isn't really a push for that. But from time to time, there will be, you know, someone takes an overdose, etc. Someone's having a meltdown. There is a crisis team. Your local GP, again, if you can get in, I know access is a big issue these days, but please, by all means, speak to your doctors and they can help you. There are lots of lovely mental health charities within some emergency departments. I've spoken to some of them. The Samaritans are very good. They help a suicide watch. They help people who want self-harm, things like that. Really nice bunch. Lovely, very, very good. I would recommend. Some guys that I've worked with here in Manchester called Men Talk Ubuntu. They specialize in speaking to men or boys, or, you know, generally the male gender. And I think they're expanding their scope this year to females as well. But there's loads of different charities like that. There are other NHS commission services, Healthy Minds, Relate, Thrive, loads of different ones. Of course, here in Cannes as well, we have a dedicated mental health department, and we have free counseling services for people who want it. So thank you very much for listening to me. I will hand back to Ngozi. I think I've gone a little bit over just 2 minutes what I wanted to do, but I thought it's good to give a broad overview and then we can have a quick chat if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. As fantastic as usual, really clear, lots of information, and something good to get us started for the new year, isn't it? Yeah. So from my point of view, I think there's lots of questions in the chat that we can get through. But I want to start broadly. With the cost of living crisis, I think people have found themselves feeling really down. I don't know whether you can call it, it's not down enough to feel depressed. It's perhaps a natural reaction, but there are more people feeling stressed about the current crisis in our society. We know it's much more expensive to buy food. We've heard of supermarkets now putting baby milk behind locked cupboards because of the increase in theft of baby milks. But that's just a symptom, isn't it? Yeah. So to think that people feel like they need to be pushed into stealing baby milk, that means that they're really desperate. So it is an issue, isn't it? Because if you don't,
it is. I mean, without getting too political about it, unfortunately. So I thank you for bringing us back to the core issue. Because I didn't want to hone in too much, but because we start going into the realm of financial advice and politics. But this is really important, the point you just highlighted. The fact of the matter is, now that we're in the last 18 months or so, 12 months especially, there's a lot more families who previously were not under financial pressure, who are now under financial pressure. and as it were, like the old saying, the poor are getting poorer. And so people are doing more desperate things. You have children being, meals being skipped in school meals, and things like that. So the way I tend to address that is that, look, this is a multifaceted issue. This is a big issue that deals with the whole country. So the way I tend to advise my patients, start by protecting yourself. You have to cut your coat according to your abilities. Cut out excessive spending. Make sure that you protect the immediate thing. In terms of the law of the pecking order of things, if you are going on 2 or 3 holidays in the past, try and make sure that you take care of the little things, the simple things that matter first, and make sure that that's looked after. But that's part of the protective factor that I talked about. We have to now accept that there is a living mental health, cost of living crisis. There are some people who didn't for a long time accept that. I heard an argument rather in the gym. Some people are saying, "Oh, no, this is just something that the government is trying to push on us." From the little that you've just highlighted, Ngozi, the fact is there is a problem, or there are problems. The first thing is accepting that. Second thing now is, how do we deal with that on a daily basis? And I think it starts with self-awareness, the fact that this is a problem and we need to start looking at ways of how to deal with it personally.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is just take us to some of the questions that we've received, some of them, and thank you very much for being interactive. As I said at the beginning, this session is for you. So if there are any questions you have, if you're a bit shy about putting them in, you can put them in privately to me and we will ask them on your behalf. So some of the questions we've received so far. Someone said, how do you know when someone's suffering with mental health issues, and what are the signs to look out for? And I think that came in at the beginning. Sam, you've answered some of that throughout your talk.
Yeah.
One of the other questions someone has asked is, I'm now in my 30s. I'm back to sleeping 9 hours a day like a teenager. Is that normal? They've put in brackets, I work out and I have a busy job. I'm quite envious if anybody can get to sleep 9 hours a day.
Honestly, I take my hat off to you. 9 hours, that's a luxury, But, like I said, it's not about how long or how little, it's how well. So if you can afford to sleep 9 hours, I take my hat off to you. As a matter of fact, I want you to mentor me because I don't know how to sleep 9 hours. Okay, so here is the thing. As long as you're meeting all your obligations, as long as the sleep is not a hindrance to your health, to your social life, and to your ability to be able to function, kudos to you. If that some research suggests that as you grow older, not 30s, by the way, I'm talking about over 60s and 70s, 30s, I think to people like Ngozi, you're still a baby. Over 60s, 70s, people tend to sleep more, or even start to go to bed earlier because you just get tired more easily and all that. But generally, if you can afford to sleep 9 hours, that's fine. That's great. There's no right or wrong answer as long as you are getting good sleep. And that's really the point of emphasis. Some people sleep 9 hours and they don't feel rested. Now that's a problem. That is a big problem because if you don't feel rested, that means you've not reset yet. Your body has not managed to repair itself, and it will affect your day, especially if you drive or you operate machinery or you have a job where you have to be using your brain a lot. It will affect your cognitive function. You won't be able to concentrate. So it's really important to emphasize good sleep rather than long sleep.
There's another question here about why do some people have a naturally positive mindset and others just seem to be low all the time?
That is a really, really good question. As a matter of fact, I was going to mention that in my presentation, but I didn't want to be too verbose or too garrulous in my speech. The truth of the matter is, some of us have a naturally positive mental, but everything, positive mental health or positive mindset can be developed. It's something that you can develop. So there are different personality types. Without boring you all, you have the phlegmatics, you have the cholerics, you have the sanguines, you have melancholics. So people who are sanguines, for example, they are the life of the party. They want to talk to everybody, they make friends with everybody, they're all around. Don't ask them, however, to plan a project because they don't know how to plan. But they're the life of the party. They're always positive. Melancholics are the deep thinkers. And often they present with negative because they see all the problems. They see all the loopholes. The point, though, is that every personality type can meet each other halfway. The melancholics, by the way, are often the geniuses of our world. The Michelangelos, the composers, the big, doctors. So by and large, you have different personality types. Each one has a positive aspect to it. Each one has a negative aspect to it. What you and I need to do is identify where we fall in the spectrum and see how we can increase our negativity. I'll give you an example. I have choleric and melancholic tendencies. So cholerics are go-getters. They are the type A individuals. They are the people who are leaders. They are go-getters. And often the disadvantages you have with that is that they run roughshod on people. They are so bent on achieving the project that they don't care whose feelings, whose ox is God, whose feelings are tampered on. But over time, I learned to work on that. And my melancholic tendencies, which tends to be defeatist, which helped me actually in medical school because I could think and all of that, I had to work on that as well. Maybe one of these days we'll have a talk about personality types. But yeah, all of these things can be developed. I see someone's got a hand up. Going back, I don't think I answered your question completely about the child and this, people hiding baby milk. Maybe we'll talk about that in the end. But I don't want to get too political about these things because I feel that there's a bigger, wider issue. Maybe if there's time, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Just before I go to the hand up, I thought there's a couple of questions here about the nub of the issue, actually, from, the title of our talk today. And it's, how can I handle both the stress from my mental health and the struggle to afford basic health needs? And some of these are quite basic now because people are struggling. And somebody else has put a question, I can't afford mental health help anymore with the cost of living crisis going up. Are there any affordable options? So I guess from our talk today, our session today, one of the things that we need to get across at the end of it is where people can go for help and be really clear and perhaps signpost people to where they can get help and maybe somewhere where people can get out and meet like-minded people. Because even when you can't afford that, and it is the basics sometimes, it's where you can go to get help. I know that some people are reluctant to reach out because they've always managed and they've found themselves at a point in time where they're not managing to manage.
Yeah.
So where we come with some signpost people to where there are food banks and where people can get milk. If there are any resources that Caribbean African Health Network provides in terms of that mental health, because when you're feeling really low, and these things are not insurmountable, so your mortgage payments are not going to go down suddenly.
Yeah.
Your bills for your food are not suddenly going to go down, and these things do impact on people. So there's one bit about
absolutely
your mental health, and because if you suddenly find a way out, you might be able to raise yourself a little bit. If you find that everybody's in the same boat, there's something about raising your mood. That look, these are ways to cope. And looking at resources that help you to manage and make your money stretch a little bit further.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, Ngozi. And I was being a bit coy in my previous answer in saying, that first of all, we need to come to a point where we accept that there is a living crisis, because you mentioned about food banks, you mentioned about charities. I know people who would not go to those places for help, even though they need the help. Do you see what I mean? So the problem we have now is A, do people know where to get help? So B, now that we know where to get help, are people willing to actually go and get that help? Which is why I kind of alluded to the fact that, look, we need to now recognize that the whole country is going through the cost of living crisis. And there's no shame. There's no stigma in saying, you know what, things are really tight for me right now. So the next step is, am I going to be courageous enough to say and accept the fact that, you know what, I can't afford the things that I used to afford before. And maybe I should go and get some help. I'll give you a couple of case studies if it helps us. I was speaking to a patient, 42-year-old lady, 43, Black strong woman. She, I don't think there was a man in the picture, but she had 3 children. and she was working, let me just say 2.5 jobs. She was working nearly 3 jobs. She was working to the point of almost breaking down. Whatever amount of work she was doing. So I then called her in because I was quite curious, what's going on? I found out that, and this is just her story, her lifestyle did not match her earnings. And she was just working at breakneck speed to match a lifestyle that she used to have. So I said, look, lady, you need to now come to the realization that you may not be able to afford some of those things anymore. Are you willing to trade this so-called lifestyle for your health? Because clearly you're now becoming hypertensive at the age of 42. Clearly you're not coping anymore. You're making mistakes at work to the point where you're getting a disciplinary hearing. So there is that aspect of it. But then there's also another aspect of it where people genuinely, they're working hard. Maybe you've got a low-paid job and you just find out, you know what, your take-home pay is just not taking you home. Now, at that point in time, you then need to find out what are the options around it. And yes, there are food banks around, there are charities, and maybe some of the CAN staff can help in putting, Natasha and Co can put some things on there. But I know for a fact that in CAN has been responsible for helping to apply for, there's some funding that was given to several different charities. I was involved with that, where charities were giving monies to give to people, identify people who are low socioeconomic problems, and to give them, practical, tangible help, buying them food stuff, getting them stuff. We were involved with that. So CAN has been involved with that. So if you do have an issue there, please get in touch with us in CAN, and CAN will signpost you to some of. There are food banks. The other thing to mention, Ngozi, is that what we have also developed, I think it was mainly Charles and Faye, really. What they've developed in conjunction with the appropriate authorities is food banks that are appropriate for the Caribbean and African Health Network. Because sometimes you get food banks and they don't really give you what you need. So they've found a way to give us, Caribbean and African health, appropriate food help. So these resources are there, but we need to come to the terms of the fact that if I need help, please go for it. There's no crime or shame in it. Somebody mentioned about mental health, you shouldn't spend any money getting help for mental health. There are too many resources out there. Even if it's just the one we provide in CAN, which I know for a fact that we provide free of charge. You shouldn't have to. There's loads of different free charities out there. And if you need any further help, information will be in the chat group.
Thank you. Caroline, thank you for being so patient. Would you like to ask your question? Can someone from the team unmute Caroline?
Done it. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I was pressing the wrong thing. I just wanted a bit more extensive, I don't know, maybe explanation on this mental health. I mean, there's a lot more mental health being mentioned now than there was before. I'm just wondering why mental health has now just got, sort of gone through the roof, in regard to, and it's before we had all this crisis as well. I mean, mental health now is like, probably the second illness if you take away cancer or something like that. But I'm just wondering, is it something to do with the information that we're given all the time and people seem to be a bit more depressed? Is it because we're more aware of it now, so we're talking about it more now? Or what is it? Because it just seems to be, I don't know, it's just, for me, it's just come from nowhere. It looks like everybody was coping at one point, and then all of a sudden we're not coping. But we need to know why people are suffering more and more. Are we more weaker here in this country than we are in, let's say, take Africa? Because I think Africans have a lot of problems, yet you don't go there and see so much people being like, oh, I can't cope with this. I can't. Are we just a little bit more weaker here, or what is it? I'm just like baffled as to why everybody seems to be suffering from this. And then secondly, for my personal thing, I don't know, as in my 20s, I felt a bit more, I had this, I'll go through stages where I'm really low, but I could pick up myself, and what have you. But as I've gotten to, like, I'm nearly 50 now, and I don't know, I can't seem to sort of shake myself from, you know, I could just have this kind of low mood, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's hormonal, I don't know if it's environmental, but I just can't seem to shake. It's like I can't come out of that. I'm constantly like thinking negatively. So I don't know if it's in my environment. I'm just very, very baffled, and I really want to know. I do exercise. I try to eat as best, but there's so much information about eat this, then don't eat this, eat fish, don't eat. I mean, I don't know where to go. I feel like bombarded with information that I can't pick through all that information, what to eat, what not to eat. All I know is exercise is good, but you can do too much as well, and all sorts. So I just really need help in that. Sorry, it's a lot. I've spoken a lot,
Caroline,
but yeah.
that's excellent. Really, two really good questions, which I'm sure will mirror a lot of the issues that people who have tuned in today will have. So I'm going to hand back to Pastor Joe to deal with both of them. But those are really excellent questions, and thank you for bringing them to our attention.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ngozi. Really, thank you, Caroline. Those are really good questions. Let's start with the first one. Is there a higher incidence of mental health? Yes. So there are two things. First of all, there is more information out there. And with social media and with better communication, people are now able to, there's better information dissemination. I come from Africa and I've recently been to Nigeria. The truth of the matter is, those problems exist over there, but there isn't enough light being shined on it. In fact, there's a stigma. So people who suffer with mental health are kept under wraps. Things are put under. There's something called the iceberg effect in public health. Iceberg effect is such that, you know, like an iceberg, whatever you see on top, there's a huge, bigger issue underneath. That's what you get in places like Africa and things. Whereas here, even what we're seeing now, it's kind of like an iceberg effect as well, because whatever mental health issues people are going through, there's still a large proportion in the Asian community, the Afro-Caribbean community, where things are being put underneath. But to answer your question quite, bluntly, the reason why there seems to be a blowout is because A, people like myself are helping to shine more light on mental health issues, because a lot of people are dying. A lot of people are, I think people are suffering very, very badly. All right. Suicide is now the third largest killer. All right. Of people. It's now the largest cause of death. Now, who would have thought that? There's cancer, there's diabetes, there's heart attacks, suicide. And when you scale this down, it is more common in men, and more common in men over the age of 25, 30, going into their 40s. And so we need to start asking ourselves why that is the case. I did a talk for another group, I think for the Royal College of GPs, called the silent crisis. There's a big, huge mental health problem that hasn't even surfaced yet. People are going through a lot. In my patch in Trafford, here in Manchester, where I live, the local council set aside 2 years ago 1.5 million pounds because of the number of cases of suicide. I'm talking about 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds. You said you're nearly in your 50s. It's heartbreaking for people like me to have to go and attend to cases where the 25 or 24-year-old is having to take their life because their mental health issues were not being attended to. So yes, on the one hand, more light is being shined on it, but about time, but also because of better communication, that's why we're hearing about it more. All these things were happening anyway, but because nobody was shining any light on it, we really didn't know much about it. So I think if more light is being shined on it, happy days, because more needs to be shined. Like I said in my talk, if you were at the beginning, however, there is a flip side where people have become a little bit flippant about labeling things as being mental health. And I said it a little bit casually, but a lot of things that people call mental health is not really mental health. Not having icing on your carrot cake is not a mental health issue. Man United not winning is not as terrible as it is, it's not a mental health issue. So there are lots of things that people misname or miscategorize as being a mental health issue, but they're really not. That's the first part of your question. I don't know if Ngozi has anything to add to that, or if you want us to talk about that a little bit more.
I think we move on to the next one, because there are lots of other questions.
Oh, lots of other questions. So what was the second thing again? Sorry, you mentioned about yourself. I would strongly suggest that you go and speak to a mental health practitioner, or you speak to you speak to one of us. We have a strong counseling team here in Cannes, and sometimes they signpost people like yourself to me. I'll be happy to chat to you at some point. I charge a very modest fee. Carrot cake and jollof rice is what I charge. No, I'm kidding. There's no charge. It's free of charge. Speak to the counseling team at Cannes, and we will look into that. There are lots of women like you. What we need to do with you is have a few sessions and peel back what's going on with you and help you unravel this thing. The information is in the chat group. If you need to, please contact Sam, Natasha, or Fabiola. Thank you.
Just to address Caroline again, also, she said it's different to what she had in her 20s. And I think it's the optimism of youth. You know, when you're young and life is ahead of you, and then the realities of life, like the cost of living crisis, get to people, they get to you. There is someone who's put in the chat, there's a question about that this person has just turned 60 and is she feels that the actions that are currently being placed on her are expanding and making her mental health to feel worse. So she has 2 jobs. She's working part-time, one in the morning and then one in the afternoon with children and vulnerable youth. But the job centre keeps on saying, well, if you don't do more hours, that they're going to take away some of the benefits that she has at the moment. So these are real life issues that are causing people to become really stressed. And this sounds like somewhere where we can have, if there is an option for people to speak to somebody who has experience with life issues like this. So perhaps not the mental health side, because we've got that in Cannes, but maybe our legal and advocacy side, because I find that in some of these government institutions, people are not very caring. We've all heard about the post office scandal. I doubt there's, well, I hope there's not something as profound as that out there. But sometimes in these government institutions, people are just not caring.
No,
and
absolutely, 100%.
As individuals, they see them as a number on a piece of paper, and they don't deal with people individually. And sometimes that's what you need, and you need to be able to know how to navigate. So I know that Cannes has sort of legal and advocacy services. So if you're finding it difficult with forms, how to get your benefits, so practical things, and maybe that's the section of Cannes that can help you out with that. Okay, there's another question, an issue that someone brought up about social media. And every time I see, you know, they say dry January and people should stop drinking January. I think sometimes you should have a sort of social media off button for January as well. Because I know for young people, because, you know, if you look at people's Instagram and Facebook, what do people put in general? They put all the positive things that are happening with their life. And you just feel, I'm the only one out there that's not having a good time, that's not going out to eat in a posh hotel. You know, there's always pictures about your food. And you just think, all my friends and everybody I know, the whole world is having a good time apart from me. And it's not true. It's just not true. People just filter what they want everybody else to see. So if it gets to you, just have a month of no social media, turn it off, you know, for a month and see how you do with that.
Better still, I'm sorry, Ngozi, let me piggyback on that. It was meant to be in my presentation. Social media is now recognized as a precipitating factor for causing mental health problems. And that's because we all put on the best bits that we have. Even when my wife and I go out and we take pictures, we pick the best one, don't we? We pick the one with your best side, you know? So social media has been, there are actually seminars and events and things encouraging people on how to manage social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. What I would advise people is take control of your own social media journey. If you wake up in the morning and you find out that the first thing you're reaching for is your phone to get on social media, there's a problem. There are certain phones, I think the iPhone and even the Android, they'll tell you how much screen time you're using. I mean, get rid of some of those things, because like Ngozi rightly said, most of the things on social media, they're not real life things. Now, everybody doesn't always look glamorous like that. Even me that doesn't have a six-pack can ultimately have a six-pack on social media all of a sudden, and then you can start confusing me with Denzel Washington. If with good lighting and editing, forget all that. That's not real life. Somebody was saying, "Oh, I got 1,000 likes," and it becomes a vicious cycle. It's like a hamster. You're running, trying to get more and more. Social media it's a big problem. And so we need to take control of that and either switch it off, not just in January. If you believe more, if you believe more what people are saying in social media than in real life, then we have a big problem. But that's probably something we need to take another look at.
Maybe we could have a session on the
yeah
use, because there are benefits of it. Because the other day I saw something about how to cook a meal for 5 with £6. And there are loads of things like that on social media that are really quick, pithy videos on how to put your meal plan together, and it shows you exactly how to do it. So I think what you need to do is harness the benefits of social media and take away the things that don't make you feel good about yourself. And
100%.
Each person will recognize within themselves what makes them feel good and what makes them feel bad. And remove the things that make you feel bad. So you all have friends that when they leave, you think, wow, that was fantastic. And they're friends that when you see them coming, you have a bad down because they just make you down. So have a period of time where you just get rid of the things in your life that are not making you on your uppers. So another important question that has been asked in the chat is about seasonal affective disorder. Now, I hate it, winter, because you go to work in the dark. I work in an environment where there's not many windows in some of the offices I go into. So you can actually see no daylight for a whole week because you're going to work in the dark and you're coming back in the dark, and it's just dull. So people know this whole thing about seasonal affective disorder. And so since we know we need sunlight, and Black people need it even more because we lack vitamin D, is there an association between vitamin D deficiency and low mood? And should we be taking more vitamin D in winter?
That is a fantastic observation. Yeah, so simple answer to your last observation is yes and yes and yes. There is an association with low vitamin D and low mood. Low vitamin D makes you feel tired. When you feel tired, you're more likely to feel low. As a matter of fact, one of the screening tests, because I teach medical students, one of the screening tests that we use when someone is depressed is to rule out low iron and low vitamin D. Because part of the problems that people have is when you're tired and you're feeling low, it's not necessarily because of depression. Sometimes it's just low vitamin D or an underactive thyroid or low vitamin D. So yes, there is an association. 80% or 90% of our vitamin D comes from sunlight. So I think it was 2 years ago, again, Khan championed, I know because I was involved with this, we championed a case where we got the health authorities to give our communities free vitamin D, because vitamin D was found not only to improve people's mental health, it was found to help in the prevention of respiratory disorders, including COVID, but also overall well-being. So I have been taking vitamin D for the last 10 years. When I found this out, I used to work like Ngozi in a big shiny building where there were no windows and things like that. So seasonal affective disorder is a thing. It's definitely a thing. How you manage that is to find ways to deal with that. And yes, somebody mentioned about having a sun lamp, and think what I do actually, because I actually like the winter. I don't know, maybe I'm strange like that. I like winter. I like winter. You know what I do? Every office that I go into, if there isn't enough lighting, I get the maintenance team, they install more lighting. So my rooms are always mega bright. Everywhere I go, I put light into it. I control the atmosphere. Make sure my computer has nice speakers so I can hear good music. I like jazz. I like classical music. I control my environment so that the environment helps me to be able to survive. So I don't care whether it's winter or summer. I'm loving it. I'm jiving all the way. So it's really important that if you suffer with seasonal affective disorder, or even if you don't, it's really important to take charge of your environment. We live in a country where we have seasons. There are some people that hate the summer because their allergies flare up. People who suffer with hay fever and things like that. And so with every season, it's how to manage it. Notice that my definition of mental health is how to cope with normal stresses of life. You can't do anything about the weather. When you find a way to deal with the weather, please let me know. But as far as I know right now, none of us can change the weather. So it's about finding a happy medium of how to deal with that. I could talk more about it.
My instinct about the sun lamp issue is that it doesn't sound to me healthy, but I'm happy to be corrected, because I think when it is sunny or when it is bright, then go out then and you can have lights in your office. But the sun lamp, it doesn't sound like a solution. Do you have any experience about using sun lamps or advising people about sun lamps?
People have been advised to use it and it helps. It's one of the things that people who suffer with SAD, seasonal affective disorders, find useful. It's basically psychological programming. So the idea is that if it is dark, you get sad. So if you use these sun lamps and things, there is a way, but you have to be careful with UV rays and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I was
because
thinking.
those things can cause skin cancer if you're not careful. So you have to make sure you get a health approved one and not just something you get. But it's something that has been used. It's something that suggested. My friends in psychiatry, in fact, not just every psychiatrist, people that are specialized in this area will go into it. But by and large, my take on it is that prevention is always better than cure. So if you know, I have a lot of patients who, for example, let me use hay fever again. Before hay fever season starts, we have an agreement. Come to me in March or April, and we'll give you some antihistamines, and you can have it in stock and start using it before. So in the same way, if you suffer with these kind of disorders, it's probably best to, take precautions towards that time. Someone's asking, what amount of vitamin D should a person take over winter? Blah, 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 and relate. It's very important. There is no fixed number, all right? But by and large, we all need somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 units per day if you are deficient. The maintenance is 25 international units, which you will get in every multivitamin, if you are deficient, like I found myself to be deficient, then you need a larger dose. You can take up to 5,000 per day if you're really deficient, or 5,000 per week as a maintenance, depending on where you work. But if you work in a place where you're isolated from the sun, then you probably need more to keep on boosting your. I use 20,000 every other week because I like Ngozi. I work in an environment where there is no sun. Even in the summer, sometimes I have shrubs and things covering sunlight, and I'm there 9-10 hours a day. And I check my vitamin D levels every year, and it's never too much because I'm not really getting enough from the sun. So again, those are decisions that you have to make with a health professional's guide. What we often say here is that we don't like to take individual cases because there wouldn't be enough time to actually thrash out your issue. You can either speak to your local GP or get in touch with our services, and we can help you sort that out.
Thank you. They're asking, taking supplements of vitamin D or taking foods that contain vitamin D, which is better?
Taking what foods that contain vitamin D or taking supplements? Well, both really, both are okay. The truth of the matter is, most of the food that we eat, all right, are not the real thing. They're not fresh. So they may not contain all the vitamins that you need, but it depends on what your diet is. Like I said, 80 to 85% of all the vitamin D that you get actually comes from the sun. Only about 15%, 20% comes from diet. So when you think about it, diet does not provide you all the vitamin D that you need. So taking a supplement, especially for those of us with darker skin, becomes paramount. In the COVID pandemic, we found out that having vitamin D not only helped people to recover better from COVID, but also prevented people from getting severe illnesses in COVID. I was one of those who championed a paper like that. So, yeah, you have to take supplements if you are working in that place, but please speak to a health professional and get more information.
That's great. So I think the answer to that is continue taking foods that are rich in vitamin D, but they probably won't give you enough vitamin D.
It won't be enough.
For what?
It will not be nearly enough.
Especially in winter when there isn't any, not enough sunshine. And then someone's just put an anecdote in the chat, which is about a friend who lost a tooth and has then been in quite a lot of pain since then. But and I think when you're in pain, you talked about things that bring your mood down. If you're in constant pain, that is a definite way in which you might have a low mood. And the problem is that we've heard about all the issues with dentists, isn't it? That it's really difficult to get an NHS dentist now. There are hardly any. So most people have got to pay for their dental care. Again, the cost of living crisis where you don't have that extra money, you are then left in pain, just taking painkillers after painkillers. You go to A&E, and A&E is not the place. I mean, if you're in acute pain, they will sort you out, but it actually hasn't got to the root of the problem. But so thanks for sharing that. I think we're in difficult times, and we just have to pray for our country, pray for our leaders, that they make the right decisions that impact positively on our lives, because things have got a lot more expensive in the last couple of years. I listen to a program on the way to work, and what they've been doing, and it's been fascinating, is that for the last 2 years, every week they bought exactly the same things, a basket of food. So they started off 2 years ago, and every week they buy the same basket of food, and it's gone up by 37%. So that it's much more expensive. And if your salary hasn't really gone up, which it hasn't for most people, then it means that you have to dig deeper to just buy the basics. So it's bound to make you feel a bit low.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. Like I said, it's a multifaceted issue, and there is no simple solutions to that. What I will say is that, because I know you like to give me a final word, but a word before the final word is, let's be kind to each other. Let's be more empathetic towards helping each other out. I want to emphasize social isolation again and networking. Please join yourself with other people. There's no shame, in getting involved with a group. You'll find out that if you think your problem is sort of peculiar to you, by the time you join a good social network, you'll find other people who are facing the same kind of thing, and somebody else may be able to offer you some help. So I really want to emphasize that. There's a question here about early diagnosis of ADHD, autism. Too many people are diagnosed. Will early diagnosis help? Absolutely. The problem with ADHD and autism is that under the age of 6, depending on the child, under the age of 8, it's extremely difficult to make a diagnosis of it. I worked in CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health. The system used in the diagnosis in children, very young children are not able to use that system to. So under the age of 6, some children under the age of 8, we can't make a diagnosis. So of course, early diagnosis is better, but again, this is down to the education system, where a lot of schools, when I was school governor, one of the things we pushed for was pastoral care, making sure that the school nurses and other people were on top of the game and identifying students who were suffering and give them the right kind of help. But yes, in general, early diagnosis is very important.
I just wonder whether we should just park that for a different day.
No, absolutely. This is your area. You're a pediatrician,
really
aren't you? So.
Yeah. So I think that merits a day to look into the diagnosis of ADHD and autism, especially.
That's a really good one, actually. Yeah, so, ADHD,
because
ADD.
They tend to, if they have children who are misbehaving, who they're more proportion of Black children that they label as misbehaving, that we find that proportion of people who are being diagnosed is more, and we need to be able to challenge that appropriately if necessary, but also to seek help and start early intervention when required. We've come to the end of today. I've got one last question in the chat, and perhaps just 2 sentences so we can finish on time, because I know people have got things they'd like to do. And it's a question that says, can vitamin D impact your estrogen levels?
Not that I know of.
Okay, nice short answer, but thank you. So I'd like to say once again, thank you to Pastor Joe for what has been an excellent session as usual. Thank you for joining us. We have linked you to lots of resources today, so please visit the CAN website if you if you haven't been able to find them in the chat, because this session is for you, And really, when we think about mental health and the cost of living crisis, we need to be able to support all of you for anybody who's going through extra concerns and issues at this time. But thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I hope you found our session helpful. Fill in the feedback form, and please let us know the sorts of things that you'd like us to talk about. See you soon in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to all our participants. Thank you very much to our guest speaker, Dr. Joe, and the host, Dr. Ngozi, for taking us through this topic, which is mental health. We're going to use all the advice and keep the advice that you have given us and seek help, please. It's not mental health. It's an issue, but people are very ashamed of talking about it. And also, please use your social network, which is something good that is advisable. We will be here again next week on 20th. So we meet at 11 a.m. to 12:15, and our next CAFIP session will be on 20th of January, which is next Saturday. So welcome everyone, and log in on time, which is 11 o'clock. We we meet every Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. and to 8 p.m. And we'll be talking about our healthy hearts. And our host is Dr. Hiba Osekwasi with our physical instructor, Orlando Grant. Please join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll be there waiting for you. Join on time again. Thank you. Khan is organizing a webinar, and will be hosting you on the 9th of February 2024. And this will be talking about the Black women perinatal and infant mental health care services in Greater Manchester. This is a webinar. Feel free to join us. It will be nice, and I will be happy to get you to host you as well on that day. It's the 9th of February, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Yeah, we have a Black Health Inequality Summit that is planned, and please save the date, which is the 25th of March 2024, and this will be in London. So yeah, this is in London at the Royal Society of Medicine. So save the date, and this is 25th of March 2024. So become a voice for better housing in Galton. So join the Galton Home for Health Steering Group and make your voice heard. The registration is coming soon on the 1st of February. So please scan the QR code and make your voice heard to improve your Galton housing issue, and be the voice of the community. So yeah, we wanted to thank all our partners, and the Caribbean and African Health Network is working in partnership with other partners to bring this session to you every Saturday. So we give thank you to Anfield Caribbean Association, the Rafa International Development Agency, the Royal Assembly Redeemed Christian Church of God in Sheffield, and the Croydon BME Forum, and the Black Health Initiative. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year, and waiting to see you again and to host you again next Saturday, 20th of January, 11 to 12:15. Thank you. Have a wonderful Saturday and a wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye.
Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Programme, CATHIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CARN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@carn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community. CATHIP is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.